Charlie Woods just did something at a junior tournament that has the entire golf world questioning everything they thought they knew about pressure, expectations, and what it means to carry one of the most famous names in sports history. This wasn't about winning or losing. This wasn't about perfect scores or highlight reel shots. This was about a decision Charlie made that revealed more about who he is as a person and player than any trophy ever could. What actually happened that has veterans and analysts completely rethinking their assumptions? Why are people who've known Tiger for decades saying they never saw this coming? And how did one moment expose the impossible weight Charlie's been carrying since before he could even spell his own name? Let's be honest about the reality Charlie Woods faces every single time he steps onto a golf course. He's not just another talented junior player trying to earn college scholarships and build a competitive resume. He's Tiger Woods' son, which means every swing gets compared to the greatest golfer of his generation. Every tournament result gets analyzed through the lens of whether he's living up to his father's legacy. Every shot is watched by people who aren't just rooting for him to succeed, but are actively waiting to see if he'll crack under pressure that no teenager should have to carry. The junior golf circuit is brutal enough on its own without that additional weight. These are tournaments where hundreds of talented kids are fighting for rankings, recognition, and pathways to elite college programs and professional careers. The competition is fierce, the pressure is constant, and the margin between success and failure is razor thin. Most junior players deal with that pressure alone or with supportive parents who understand the game but aren't global icons whose every achievement set impossible standards. Charlie doesn't have that luxury. He has a last name that opens every door and simultaneously makes every door harder to walk through. He has a father whose career accomplishments are so extraordinary that even matching a fraction of them would be considered disappointing by people who don't understand how rare greatness actually is. And he has a spotlight that's been on him since before he was old enough to understand what it meant. What happened at this junior invitational exposed all of that in ways that made people uncomfortable. Charlie was competing in a tournament where he was expected to contend, where his name alone drew media attention and spectators who wouldn't normally watch junior golf. The pressure was building from the moment he arrived, not because of how he was playing, but because of who everyone expected him to be. If you want to understand what happened next, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story reveals something profound about identity and choice. And then Charlie made a decision that nobody saw coming. Instead of grinding through the pressure, instead of forcing himself to meet everyone else's expectations, Charlie chose to step back. Not because he couldn't compete, not because his game wasn't ready, but because he recognized that the environment had become more about managing everyone else's expectations than about playing golf in a way that felt authentic to him. That choice shocked people because it contradicted the narrative everyone had built around Charlie Woods. The assumption has always been that Charlie would follow his father's path, that he'd embrace the pressure and thrive under it the way Tiger did, that carrying the Woods name meant accepting the burden without complaint and proving himself worthy through relentless competition. But what Charlie did was something arguably harder and more mature than just winning the tournament. He made a choice that prioritized his own mental health and authentic relationship with golf over meeting external expectations. He recognized that sometimes the bravest thing an athlete can do isn't pushing through regardless of cost, but acknowledging when the circumstances aren't serving their growth and choosing a different path. The immediate reaction was mixed and revealed a lot about how people view young athletes, especially those connected to legendary parents. Some praised Charlie for maturity beyond his years, for understanding that his worth isn't determined by junior tournament results, and that protecting his love for the game matters more than satisfying people he'll never meet. Others criticized the decision as soft or entitled, suggesting that champions push through discomfort and that stepping back represented a lack of competitive fire. But both reactions miss what's actually significant about this moment. Charlie Woods is a teenager trying to figure out who he is as a golfer and as a person, and he's doing it under scrutiny that would break most adults. The decision to step back wasn't about avoiding competition. It was about refusing to let other people's expectations dictate how he experiences golf and what success means to him. People who've worked with junior golfers and understand the psychological demands of elite youth sports saw something different in Charlie's choice. They saw a kid who's developing self-awareness and agency in an environment designed to strip both away. Junior golf at the highest levels can become about pleasing coaches, satisfying parents, impressing scouts, and meeting rankings targets until the actual joy of playing gets buried under all those external pressures. Charlie, recognizing that dynamic and making a conscious choice to step away from it, even temporarily, suggests he's developing tools that will serve him far better long-term than any junior tournament victory ever could. Because the reality nobody wants to acknowledge is that most junior golf phenoms never make it professionally, not because they lack talent, but because they burn out mentally from years of pressure that started too young and never stopped. What makes Charlie's situation unique is that he doesn't need golf for financial security or opportunity. Tiger's success has ensured Charlie will have choices and options regardless of whether he ever plays professional golf. That freedom should theoretically make it easier for Charlie to play for the right reasons, but it also removes some of the external motivators that drive other junior players. When you're not chasing scholarships or trying to escape difficult circumstances through sports, the only reason to endure the pressure is because you genuinely love the competition. And that's what Charlie seems to be figuring out. Does he love golf enough to deal with everything that comes with being Tiger Woods' son? Does competitive golf bring him joy? Or has it become primarily about managing other people's expectations and defending a legacy he didn't create? Those are profound questions that most teenagers never have to answer, but Charlie's been living them since he first picked up a club. The veteran players and analysts who said they never saw this coming are revealing their own assumptions about what Charlie should want and how he should handle pressure. They assumed he'd be built exactly like Tiger, mentally unbreakable and singularly focused on dominance. But Charlie is his own person, growing up in a different era with different pressures and different perspectives on what makes life and career meaningful. Tiger grew up in an environment where golf was his pathway to everything. It gave him identity, opportunity, financial security, and purpose. His relationship with pressure was defined by using golf to prove himself and change his family's circumstances. Charlie's relationship with golf is fundamentally different. He's not proving anything to anyone except possibly himself, and that changes the entire psychological equation. What this moment at the Junior Invitational revealed is that Charlie Woods is thoughtful, self-aware, and willing to make choices that prioritize long-term authenticity over short-term external validation. Whether that leads him toward professional golf or somewhere else entirely, those qualities will serve him better than any swing mechanic or tournament victory. The golf world expected Charlie to be Tiger 2.0, a carbon copy who would recreate the dominance and handle pressure identically. What they're discovering is that Charlie is something potentially more interesting, himself. A young player figuring out his own relationship with golf, his own definition of success, and his own boundaries around what he's willing to sacrifice for other people's expectations. That's not the story people wanted or expected, but it might be the story that matters most. Because in a sports culture that glorifies pushing through regardless of cost and treats mental health as weakness, Charlie Woods just demonstrated that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose yourself over everyone else's vision of who you should be. Never saw this coming are revealing their own assumptions about what Charlie should want and how he should handle pressure. They assumed he'd be built exactly like Tiger, mentally unbreakable and singularly focused on dominance. But Charlie is his own person, growing up in